I know.
That's never
I
happened.
know.
Said no one.
Losing my touch. All right. Good evening, everybody. I will call us to order for the July meeting of Lawrence City Council. We'll begin tonight with an invocation from Councilor Miller, and I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please stand.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to come back to this place one more time to make decisions that may be pleasing in your sight, and most of all, the best interest of our citizens. Bless those who are here, those who desire to be here, unable to be here. Lord, bless this council. Let us agree to disagree in love. Bless the councils all over this land and country, and all elected officials. Bless the leader of this country, President Biden, and all his staff. Lord, we just thank you. We praise you for all the blessing you have given us. Lord, bless this land, heal this land like only you can. Lead, guide, and direct us as you would have us to go. These are the blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Once again, welcome everyone. You have noticed, I hope by now, that we've had a bit of a casting change. And the role of city attorney is now to be played by our new city attorney, Miss Jenny Murchison. We'd like to welcome her on board for this, her first city council meeting. I have just a few remarks to make briefly. City of Lawrence City Council and our administrator traveled this past weekend to Charleston for the annual meeting of the Municipal Association. And we were pleased at that meeting to be recognized by South Carolina Main Street Organization for two things. First is the Holmes family and their contributions to the city of Lawrence and renovating buildings in our town and contributing to the renewal of our community. And the most exciting, I would say, is, at least for us anyway, was the top award, the Excellence on Main Street Award that we received for Lawrence Lights the Night. It was actually received for Lawrence Lights the Night back in 2021, the first year, and we just were fortunate enough to celebrate that again for the second time earlier this month, and by all reports that I've received, a good time was had by all. So we're very proud to receive that. But maybe more to the point than the awards we received, we did a lot of learning while we were down there. There were some great sessions letting us know about the changes in South Carolina law, what is going on with the changes in the legislature and what we can expect for the coming year. But we talked a lot about civility and the importance that that plays in public life. And one of the things that I can say that I've been very proud of is that I think the City of Lawrence does a very good job of portraying who we want to be and what we want to see in the actions of this council. We are a council which conducts itself with respect and civility. And there was a general feeling among attendees of that conference that while you may not see the leadership that you want and the civility that you would want in Washington, and you may not necessarily see it in Columbia, the municipalities across our state are committed to showing leadership. And I hope tonight we take steps with the introduction of one of the ordinances we'll consider to actually codify that and make that the law of the City of Lawrence. We have the honor tonight to recognize some outstanding work that's been done by the Lawrence Police Department. Our police department is the only agency in the 8th Judicial Circuit to receive the 2021 Target Zero Challenge Award, Gold Award, that's presented by the South Carolina Law Enforcement Network. The 8th Judicial Circuit, just for your reference, is Abbeville, Greenville, Lawrence, Abbeville, Greenwood, Lawrence, and Newberry counties. Target Zero Challenge is a statewide traffic enforcement initiative that focuses on stepped-up enforcement, education, and public information to reduce traffic fatalities and serious injury collisions to zero within our state. I'm extremely proud of the work of our department, and I'm particularly proud of the work of an officer who joins us here tonight. But at this time, I'd like to call upon Chief Lattimore to make some remarks.
Mayor, Council, thank you and welcome. Mayor, Council, thank you for having us this evening. This is Sergeant Casey Jones, Sergeant Ryan Willards, and they make up Lawrence Police Department's Traffic Safety Unit. Unfortunately, they both play dual roles. Ryan is also a sergeant for the road, which means he has to dedicate a portion of his time to traffic enforcement as well as developing and leading those that he serves as a sergeant for. And the same applied for Sergeant Jones. Sergeant Jones was an independent individual in the traffic safety unit, and we had some personnel changes, so we had to bring him back to the road to help us with leadership development and different things like that. And despite everything that we went through, these two were still able to put in enough work so that Lawrence would be recognized at the gold level for 2021 Target Zero Challenge. So we are super excited for their dedication, and we look forward to great things from them in the future when they come together as a unified traffic unit with the two of them. So that's what we're working towards, and hopefully we can make that become a reality. So with that being said, could I stand before you all and present this to them?
Help yourself.
Thank you to the both of you for your hard work and dedication.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, officers. We are very, very proud of you and very grateful for the work you do to keep our streets safe. All righty. That takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is the public participation and hearing period. We have had no individuals sign up for that, so we'll move on to the items on the consent agenda, which include the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting and approval of the minutes from June's meeting. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion we approve the consent agenda for July 19th, 2020 as printed.
Second motion.
Do we have a motion and a second? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of passage of the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. And the consent agenda is approved. Thank you, council. All right, moving on to new business. we have three ordinances before us tonight that we'll address in turn. The first two are products of a discussion that we had as council at the workshop, which was held last year, led by Jeff Shacker from the Municipal Association. And during that workshop, we discussed some of the challenges that face the city, and it was the apparent consensus of council that we should proceed with drafting ordinances to the effect that we'll consider tonight. And so we have taken that direction from that workshop and prepared these ordinances. I say we as if I had a hand in it. It's actually our city attorney. And we now present those to you tonight. First is Ordinance 7-22-01, which concerns the registration of vacant buildings. Copies of this proposed ordinance were previously provided to council in their packets. So, do I have a motion concerning this ordinance?
I make a motion that we approve on first reading the ordinance requiring the registration, which will be 7/22/01.
Thank you, Councilor Miller. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'm not going to make it harder than it is, but just to give the public some awareness of what this is about. This vacant building registration does not affect private property owners' rights in any way whatsoever. But what it does do is say that if you have a building that's vacant, we need to know that it's vacant. So we have the ability to mitigate safety concerns, and so that we can, if desired, work with the property owner to come up with a plan for getting it occupied. We believe that this will help reduce places that become safe havens for crime. It should improve property values of neighboring buildings by not having derelict, abandoned buildings. And as I said, it protects the safety of the community. That is the chief effect of this. I believe that that's all the comments I have to make about it. But I'm happy to. Councilor Lattimore.
Thank you. Are these the owners that own these buildings? They still own the vacant building, and what they're looking for someone to come in and do business in the building.
Yes, ma'am. So the owners who own a vacant building still own the building. Nothing changes about that. The only thing is they let us know that it's vacant, and there's a registration, but that registration for the first year is free. And there would only be a registration fee if it is vacant on a long-term basis.
And then after the first year, if they pay fees, if it's not brought up to some kind of standard or something, or what's the?
Counselor, if within that first year it becomes occupied, then they're good to go. If after that first year it is still vacant, it sort of depends on what the circumstances are that are leading to the vacancy. If it's actively being marketed, and somebody's trying to sell it, or if it's undergoing renovation, there are many things that can lead to a vacancy. But what we do want to discourage is buildings just sitting there empty and becoming derelict and posing hazard to the community.
And saying that all of the buildings, we will have to be invited to assist or to inspect or whatever. We just don't go in. I think I read that. Did I?
That's correct. So part of what this does is it not only registers the building, so we're aware that a particular building is vacant, but it triggers a mechanism for an inspection to be done, so that we can ensure that there aren't any undue hazards. We have a representative, our new chief of the fire department, here to speak in favor of it. If council has any questions for him, but I can testify to the fact that maybe testify is not the proper word. I'm not under oath. I can speak to the fact that one of our business owners downtown had a strong smell of gas coming into her business, and by God's good grace, they were able to get with CPW and get into the building, the vacant building next door, and shut down a gas leak before it blew a hole in both their businesses. But that's the sort of danger that this is intended to prevent. These unoccupied buildings, by definition, are more dangerous. Chief, would you like to say a word or answer questions?
If you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer. One thing I could touch on, you know, our fire marshals conduct fire safety inspections throughout all commercial business, even the vacant ones. But unfortunately, when they're vacant, it's hard to get in touch with people to get in and to make sure they're complying with fire code as well. So having this list would benefit us to be able to go in and conduct the fire inspections to make sure all the codes, the buildings are brought up to code. One thing we do run into as well, businesses will allow their buildings to sit there without being up to fire codes, and it's hard to get renters in there because it does not meet fire code to actually occupy the building.
Okay, we got existing buildings now, say that's been vacant for going on 2 years. So this will go into effect when we approve first reading. So they can still stand that way for a year if they don't want anything to them.
Council, let me provide some clarification about that. We wanted to show as much grace as possible in giving people time to come into compliance with this new ordinance.
Well, that's the
So if we pass this on first reading tonight, which I hope we will, and we have second reading at next month's meeting, our August meeting, people would have from August until January 1, 2023 to register these vacant properties. It would only be after January 1, 2023 that vacant buildings that are unregistered would incur some sort of penalty for failing to comply with the ordinance. So there's sort of a stepped up in approach where there's the requirement, but there is no penalty until January.
So we won't be tearing down any houses, no kind of thing. I mean, not until after this goes into effect and after.
Well, this is actually, I suppose there could be some overlap between vacant buildings and derelict buildings which need demolition, but these really serve two different purposes. Vacant buildings being registered here is simply a matter of providing the city with data, knowing what's vacant, and being able to ensure the safety of those buildings by providing a mechanism for inspection to be done and working with property owners if they desire to bring those buildings to a state where they can be occupied. The issue of derelict buildings is more of a code enforcement issue and the property maintenance code. So there will be some overlap between those two, but somebody may still be in violation of the property maintenance code regardless of whether or not they've registered their building as vacant. We have a hard time. We're beginning our strategic planning process as a city. We have to prepare a comprehensive plan every 10 years, so we've begun that process. it's difficult to know what's out there and what needs to be dealt with if we don't have that information reported to us. So this provides a mechanism for that. Another issue that we run into a lot is some vacant buildings are owned by individuals who are out of town or out of state for that matter. And we need to do something to address the condition of the building, and maybe a derelict building that is ready to be demolished. But we don't know who to talk to and can't get in touch with them. So one of the requirements of this ordinance would be to designate a in-town contact person so that we're not chasing everybody all over creation. The bottom line here is we're protecting the safety of the community at large and looking after the interests of the community at large while still respecting the rights of private property owners. We're just simply expecting a level of personal responsibility. If you care enough to have property in the city of Lawrence and you want to continue to own it, it's the least we can expect, that you should maintain it to the standards of our property maintenance code, and that you should let us know if it's sitting there vacant. Give the fire department an opportunity to make sure it's not going to blow up.
I have another question. There's one in my district. It's right in front of Beasley Funeral Home. And it's all grown up now. And I've been checking on that. It's through some kind of development, but they don't live here. They're in like Des Moines or another state. And I did try to get in touch with them. I called. I never got an answer. But if anybody checked it, I don't know how. Because it's all grown up. Can't hardly see it now. Right in front of Beasley's Funeral Home.
This ordinance is directly on point for what you're talking about. If you have a vacant structure of any kind, whether it be residential, industrial, or commercial, if it's a structure that a certificate of occupancy could be issued for, if it is vacant within 120 days of that vacancy, you'd be required to register it with us, and the first year registration would be free.
It's been more than a year since I've been talking to them.
We sort of have to draw the line at some point and start counting, but hopefully.
It's a start anyway. To get
Yeah.
their attention.
Okay, I've got a question. All right, looking underneath the fees, I notice it says under section 7, the hardships is determined by the city administrator, and this is under the exemptions part. But then we also talk about exemptions on line item number 8. It says on a case-by-case basis as determined by the department. So we've got the department, we're meaning the building codes. My question is, we have exemptions being determined by 2 different bodies.
So
It presents a little bit of an issue.
that's a good question. So I present that to council as a decision point. We can either have the administrator sort of be the point man for when those hardships exist and when they should be exempted, or we could have a exemption that may also be granted by the department, specifically the building and zoning administrator. It's a judgment call. Right now, they both have that authority. We certainly could amend the ordinance to have it just be the administrator if that's council's desire.
I'm going to state my opinion on that. It would be my desire to have one instead of having. It would also be my desire that it be a little more, hardships, we're talking about financial hardship?
Well, they're not specifically defined. Presumably hardships would specifically address financial hardships, would generally address financial hardships. I suppose the way I read that is hardships are determined by the city administrator, but there are exemptions which may not be hardships that would be determined by the department.
Unforeseen items that come up. I mean, you
Correct.
can't foresee anything. Okay.
Because there technically could be a difference. You could have an exemption that would be appropriate on a case-by-case basis, right?
Sure. Okay. All right. I don't have a problem with that. I would personally like to see 1 point, but I understand that, if building and zoning's out looking at a property and they want to say there's an exemption case or case by case, I understand that.
Counselor, would you mind I suggest you phrase that in the form of a motion to amend?
I can amend. I'm also going to amend something else. The hardships part.
Okay.
I think there needs to be a little more definition on that. I think there needs to be proof of hardship, not statement of hardship. Somebody comes in and says, I don't have any money. I think we need to see a little bit more financial information that determines a hardship.
If they say they don't have any money, but they drive up to City Hall in a brand new BMW.
That pretty much right. Or if they say they have zero income, and we know that's not true. We've had this discussion before. I think hardships, I understand hardships. I'm sympathetic to hardships, but I'm not sympathetic to somebody that comes in and says, I don't have any money. And that's very not the case. Those would be my two things.
With that,
I can.
if I heard you correctly, I think you had a motion.
Well, we've got a motion and a second.
we can have a motion to amend before we call a decision on the
Okay.
ultimate question.
Well, I will be more than happy to do a motion to amend before we get down to questions.
All right. All right.
We'll make sure we get it right.
Any,
We just got Robert's Rules of Order book, so we'll make sure we get it right. I haven't read my whole book yet.
I've got my parliamentarian in the ear. So all right.
I'll stop you if you get off rails.
Okay, all right. We need a parliamentarian here to take care of it.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Any other questions? All right. Martin, you want to?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend ordinance 7-22-01 to include under section 12-2223 the fees 7D. I'm gonna put my glasses on so I can read this. 7D, the hardships part. I would like to amend that to include a definition of hardships to be as decided by the city administrator, but also upon documentation of that hardship. Is that pretty close?
Might I suggest documentable hardships?
Documentable hardships. I like that. That's a documentable.
Words, man.
Words, I know. You attorneys know those words. All right. And then I'd also no, I'm okay with that. We'll just stay with that. If we want to have the city administrator and the department do that, making decisions, I'll go along with that. Okay, that's my amendment.
That's your name.
That's my amendment.
All right. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on motion to amend? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of amending section 12-223 of the ordinance as proposed by Councilor Lowry, please indicate saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The amendment is approved. Is there any further discussion on the question of passage of the ordinance as a whole, as amended? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of passage of ordinance 7-22-01 on first reading, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. The measure passes unanimously. Thank you, council. I think our citizens will be happy. All right, moving on to the next,
But this one coming up.
moving on to the next item on the agenda is ordinance 7-22-02, which is a ordinance that's similar in nature, but it requires the registration of rental housing in the city of Florence. This also is presented to council as a product of our discussions at the workshop that was held last year. There are people that rent houses in the city of Lawrence, and that is a good thing because we need a good, strong rental housing market. There are plenty of people that are not able right now or don't have any desire to be the owner of a single family home. But it's also important that the rental houses that we have available are fit for human habitation. And right now we have a sort of a loophole where if a landlord maintains the utilities in their name, there is no trigger for the city to do an occupancy inspection between tenants because from the city's perspective, we never know about it. And this has led to the issue of unsafe, unfit housing remaining on the market. And it seems to be the desire of council to do what we can to eliminate blight in our city and unfit houses. So that's what this ordinance does. There's a registration that is required by landlords and consequences if they fail to do that. So do I hear a motion concerning ordinance 7-22-02?
Yes, you do. Something that's long overdue, but I'll let somebody else do it. Go
I
on.
think she was about to fight you for it.
Go on,
I promise you get a second.
I make a motion that we accept ordinance 722-02.
Second.
We have a motion. Is there a second, Ms. Miller?
Yes, sir.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Please.
Okay. I used to be a owner in Manor. And what we did was when before we give that person the keys to the house, they have to come back with their permit from the city where they have went and signed up. Now, how are you going to enforce the people, the owners, to do that?
So that's a good point. This puts the onus, the burden on the landlord to do what they need to do as landlords in the city. Simply to let us know that they are operating as landlords, that they're not conducting that business without a business license, which in and of itself is a violation under our current laws anyway. But not only that they register as a landlord, but that they let us know when there's a change in occupancy in each of those houses. And that would trigger both a change in occupancy for the purposes of CPW, but it would also trigger a change in occupancy for our purposes so that we have the ability to go in and inspect those houses. Make sure that they have smoke detectors next to the bedrooms, just basic fire safety things to ensure that we have livable homes that aren't fire traps. So this puts the responsibility on the party that is best equipped to be able to manage it, which would be the landlord. And having spoken to a number of landlords, I don't want to call them out by name, but what I was encouraged to hear was they're actually very much in support of this, because if the city is coming in and saying, yes, this building is fit, that's sort of a seal of approval where they've had another set of eyes on the building other than theirs, verifying the condition of the building. So it's a welcome thing for landlords as well. I hope that answers your question.
It did, but a lot of people haven't had it.
I've always felt that we needed some of this.
Long overdue.
Well, I'll speak from I own a few rental properties, and I'm absolutely overseeing. This is overdue. I see too many rental properties, and you all do too, that are not in good condition, and how they stay like that is by avoiding occupancy permits and inspections. Anything we can do for them to keep it, we need.
That's how some of the houses are getting kicked there.
I can promise you that those people on the back row don't want to go to a structure fire because somebody didn't have non-inspection in a bad situation.
And we have a lot of young landlords that put good money in their homes or their houses, and they rent them out to a family, and then another family move in, and when you go in, the house is destroyed. And they are very, I know one in particular is happy that we are doing something, because he spent thousands of dollars on his home, on his house.
Well, I was speaking with another mayor down in Charleston about this, that I have a lot of respect for, about this, and he was extremely jealous that he didn't have this in his city, and he said, you may not see the full effect of this, maybe even in your lifetime, but the cumulative effect that this will have on improving the city over the course of years is going to be tremendous. Both the landlord registration and the vacant buildings registration are not unique to us. There are other cities that have similar programs. In fact, the recommendation for both came from Jeff Shacker, who is our municipal association representative, but who previously served as the city administrator for the city of Newberry. And Newberry, our neighbors just to the south, have similar ordinances. So this is just a practical way of our city being able to approach this problem, and it's obviously had good results elsewhere. And like I think everybody said, it's sorely needed. Any further discussion? Questions? Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of passage 7-22-02 on first reading, please indicate saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing none, the measure is passed unanimously. Thank you, council. All right, and finally, we'll bring up our third ordinance of new business tonight. This is an amended council rules of procedure. We already have some very bare bones rules of procedure in our ordinance. And more or less, it basically says, whatever Robert's rule says, do that. There's not much else in terms of meat on the bone. So, at the request of Councilor Sullivan, we had a workshop recently where we invited Mr. Shacker to come speak to council. And one of the things that he suggested is a customary thing to make sure that city council meetings run smoothly and orderly and with the civility that we discussed in my opening remarks is by passage of more defined rules of procedure. And so that's what these rules do. I will say, just for the record, I mentioned this with our city attorney, I wanted to take a intentionally hands-off approach on this. So while I have reviewed it, I had no hand in actually preparing it. So we all are sort of approaching this from a city council standpoint on equal footing. So appreciate your preparing this for us, and I will open up the floor for any motions concerning the ordinance.
Make a motion to pass 07-2203.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Just for the public's knowledge and press, we clarified my role as presiding officer at the meetings. We set the time of regular meetings. We address the need for special meetings and what constitutes a quorum and what happens in the absence of a quorum. We address the necessity of having permission before leaving council meetings. There's a requirement for me to preserve order during the course of meetings and to follow Robert's Rules of Order. It also establishes an order of business, which follows our current agenda format, in which there is an ordering of the business of council, a period for public participation in hearings. I'll make one note there, that's not required. Public participation in hearings is not required under our current law or under state law for that matter. But we've done that. I said in our meeting and our workshop that I want to err on the side of democracy by allowing public participation. And so that will now be codified and included. We approval of consent agenda, new business, old business, and adjournment. There's also guidelines for participation in meetings. No one other than members of city council can take part in deliberations. So while we certainly appreciate our administrator and clerk and city attorney, they are not elected representatives. We deal with the deliberations of council and our requirement to have opening of meetings at the appointed time, so we don't call meetings at strange times. I think I was 2 minutes late, but that still should fall under. It clarifies that it is my prerogative to speak on points of order, and that I should preserve order. And if I speak to a point of order, it provides a mechanism of appealing my decision, which puts the question to council as a whole. Once again, is my responsibility as presiding officer to call council members to order if they are out of order. And generally, we don't have a problem with speaking over each other, but I would make a decision as to who would be the priority among speakers if we have two people talking over each other. We limit debate among council members to no more than twice on the same subject, and no more than 5 minutes in making any remarks, unless we as a council grant that extension. Motions generally are to be made verbally, although they may be put in writing. We limit the number of motions and amendments to resolutions and ordinances to 3. And we provide a procedure for those amendments. And because we love Ms. Miller, we discuss motions to adjourn. And to lay a motion, or to lay on the table. We address calling the question. Members may call for a division of question if there are 2 issues being considered at one time. Any council member can break up an issue so it's not considered jointly but as 2 separate matters. Any council may have a motion for reconsideration at the succeeding council meeting. We take ayes and noes for votes. We preserve the rights of members to have protests entered into the minutes. No measure is allowed to be introduced as a rider to another matter. Violation of rules of order will subject any member of council to censure as city council as a body directs. We apply these rules to both special meetings and regular meetings. And we may have a suspension of the rules of order if that is approved by council. So that is the issue before us. Hopefully that exercise is helpful to know, A, we know what's in there, and B, so that the public knows that we take our commitment to civility seriously. And we're doing our part to actually make that the requirement of law. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Sounds like I've exhausted the topic. All right. Hearing none. With my thanks for preparing this to the city attorney. All those in favor of passage of ordinance 7-22-03, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. And the matter is passed unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to the end of new business. We have no old business. So the only thing left to consider is I believe I heard a motion to adjourn from the Mayor Pro Tem.
Second motion.
And we have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
We adjourned. I want to thank the council members so much. It made me feel so good to see all of us in Charleston. We had everybody there, a full count, and I'm so happy and so proud of y'all.